Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of voice AI, conversational intelligence, all that with SoundHound AI, Inc. We got their Q3 2024 financial report. It was filed just last week, and it's packed with insights.
It is a really fascinating report. What I think is really interesting here is how SoundHound is really finding its own lane. In this landscape of voice AI, they're not just trying to be another Siri or just another Alexa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're really focused on what they call independent voice AI solutions.
Yeah.
And it's all about giving brands more control over their own voice experience.
So it's like instead of being kind of overshadowed by one of these big tech brands, they can use SoundHound's technology to create something unique and something that's truly representative of their own brand and identity, which I think is probably a pretty compelling proposition, especially for companies who are very protective of their image.
Absolutely. And, they're very much focused on the idea of customization and brand ownership. With SoundHound, you retain control over the user experience. Your brand stays front and center. So you're not just licensing technology. You're really partnering to create a customized voice solution.
Now, the report outlines what they call this three-pillar revenue model. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so the first pillar is product royalties. So essentially, SoundHound earns royalties. When their voice AI is integrated into products, we're talking anything from like cars, smart appliances, all the way to wearables. So every time one of these Houndify products sold, SoundHound gets a cut.
Okay, so it's kind of a volume game. The more devices that are out there using their tech, the more those royalties add up. What about the second pillar?
So the second pillar is service subscriptions. So with this, SoundHound is providing voice-enabled services, things like customer support, food ordering. You can even do appointment scheduling through voice. And businesses subscribe to these services.
Yeah.
And this creates that nice recurring revenue for SoundHound.
So that's a little bit more of a steady income stream as opposed to the product royalties, which would probably fluctuate a lot depending on, how those products are selling. But then there's this third pillar, and this one really caught my eye. It's called the monetization ecosystem. What is going on there?
That's where things get really, really interesting. So this pillar is all about connecting those first two pillars. So imagine ordering groceries directly through your smart refrigerator using voice commands. That's the kind of seamless transaction that SoundHound is aiming for. And then they would share the revenue generated from these transactions with the product creator. So it creates this kind of like monetization flywheel effect.
Okay, so they're not just providing the voice technology, but they really want to be the platform for a whole new world of voice-driven commerce. That's pretty ambitious. If they can pull it off, it could be huge. It could change the way we interact with brands, change the way we shop online. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. Let's look at their financials now. The report highlights some pretty impressive revenue growth.
Oh, absolutely. Their total revenue for Q3 2024 was 89% higher than the same period last year, which suggests that they're really tapping into a real demand for independent voice AI solutions.
That is a massive jump. So it seems like the strategy that we've been talking about is really starting to gain some traction, but I imagine such rapid growth often comes with its own set of challenges, right?
You're absolutely right. The report does acknowledge that. These recent acquisitions, particularly SYNQ3 and Amelia, have come with some growing pains.
Yeah, let's talk about those acquisitions for a second. SoundHound shelled out a considerable amount of money for these companies earlier this year. Remind us what each company brings to the table.
So SYNQ3, which they acquired in January, specializes in customer service and call center solutions. So think about those automated systems. They can understand and respond to you naturally, even if you go off script a little bit.
So that's a big step forward from those really robotic voices that you get sometimes when you call customer service, or you just want to scream representative into the phone. What about Amelia?
Amelia, which they acquired in August, focuses on enterprise clients, so in healthcare, finance, and retail. Imagine you have a sophisticated AI handling really complex customer interactions, like answering your questions about your bank account or walking you through a medical diagnosis.
So it's not just about like ordering pizza with your voice anymore. These are some pretty serious applications. But these acquisitions have also been impacting their bottom line.
Yeah, so the report does show that while these acquisitions are strategically very important, they have led to a decrease in gross margins. Because integrating new businesses, especially ones that have lower margins, like SYNQ3's call center operations, it puts pressure on profitability. And then there are also increased costs associated with amortizing those intangible assets that they acquired in these deals.
So they're growing like crazy, but it's costing them. Sounds like a bit of a tightrope walk. They need to prove that these acquisitions are going to pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. The report itself highlights the risks that are inherent in this strategy, particularly the challenge of integrating these businesses effectively, while also managing costs and, just staying ahead in a very, very competitive market.
So there's a lot riding on their ability to make these acquisitions work. They need to demonstrate that they can scale this business efficiently and show the value of these new additions.
Exactly. It's about finding those synergies, the areas where 1 plus 1 equals 3, where the combined companies are greater than the sum of their parts.
All right, so we've got this picture of a company with a really bold vision for the future of independent voice AI. They're making big moves. They're seeing some impressive growth, but they're also facing some serious challenges. So where do we go from here?
Well, the next part of our deep dive, we're going to delve a little deeper into those challenges. We'll explore the competitive landscape that SoundHound is navigating. We'll analyze their path to profitability, and we'll take a look at those risks that are mentioned in the report. Integrating those acquisitions, controlling costs, and staying ahead of the competition.
Sounds like a plan. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll continue to unpack SoundHound AI's journey and see if their bold bets are going to pay off.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up right where we left off with our exploration of SoundHound AI. Last time we talked about all this impressive growth, but we also talked about all these growing pains. So let's dig into those challenges a little bit. When I think about SoundHound going up against the likes of Google and Amazon and Apple in this space, it kind of feels like David versus Goliath. So how can they possibly compete with these giants?
Right. That's the big question. But David did win that fight. SoundHound has a strategy here that really plays to their strengths. They're not trying to build another Alexa or another Google Assistant. They're not going after mass market dominance. Instead, they're really laser focused on specific niches, offering these really highly customized solutions that cater to the unique needs of businesses. So it's about being the best fit, not necessarily the biggest name, instead of kind of getting lost in the crowd. Of all these mass market voice assistants out there, they're aiming to be the go-to provider for companies that want something that is tailored just for them.
Exactly. They're positioning themselves as the champions of brand control and customization, the alternative to handing over your customer experience to big tech. And that's resonating with a lot of companies who are increasingly wary of becoming too reliant on these platforms, especially if they compete with them in other areas.
Right. It's that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But even with a smart strategy, can SoundHound really overcome the sheer scale and resources of these tech giants? It seems like they could just replicate a lot of SoundHound's features if they wanted to.
Well, the report does acknowledge that risk. The risk of the giants either replicating their technology or undercutting them on price. But SoundHound is betting on their technological advantage. And this kind of commitment to independence.
So better tech and a different philosophy. It's a bold approach. But I can see the appeal. I mean, this space is still so young. Things are changing so rapidly. There's no guarantee that the giants are going to stay on top forever.
Exactly. I mean, new technologies emerge, consumer tastes change, regulations shift. All of these things are opportunities for a company like SoundHound to gain ground.
So competition is one hurdle that they have to overcome. But their report also mentions these internal challenges, specifically managing this rapid growth and integrating these acquisitions. Talk about a high-wire act. I mean, scaling up any business is hard enough, but doing it while also absorbing multiple new companies, that's got to be incredibly complex.
Oh, it's hugely complex. It takes incredibly careful management of resources, making sure that teams mesh well together, and really preserving that company culture amidst all of that change. It's not easy.
And their financials show that these acquisitions have really impacted their gross margins. What are they doing to address that?
Well, their report outlines a multi-pronged approach. First, they're working to integrate the acquired businesses as seamlessly as possible, finding ways to streamline operations and eliminate any redundancies.
So classic merger stuff. Make it leaner and more efficient.
Right. But they're also looking to leverage the combined size of the company now to negotiate better deals with their suppliers and partners.
That makes sense. It's all about finding that 1 + 1 = 3 equation.
Exactly. They need to prove that these acquisitions weren't just about buying technology or buying customers, but about creating a more profitable and robust business overall.
But cost-cutting can only take you so far. They also need to keep growing revenue. How are they approaching that?
Well, they're doubling down on R&D, focusing on enhancing their core voice AI, expanding the languages that it supports, and really developing new features and capabilities.
It's like they're playing chess, thinking several moves ahead. And of course, there's that monetization ecosystem that we were talking about earlier. That's still a big question mark, right? This idea of creating a whole voice-driven commerce platform is incredibly ambitious.
It is. There are major technical hurdles to overcome, partnerships to establish, and they really have to convince consumers to adopt this entirely new way of shopping.
So much potential there, but so much could go wrong. It's a big gamble.
It is a gamble, but the payoff could be huge. If they can make this ecosystem work, they could become major players in the future of e-commerce. I mean, we're talking about changing how we buy everything, from groceries to plane tickets, all with our voice.
It's a vision that really blurs the lines between voice assistants and smart devices and online shopping as we know it. Really exciting stuff, but also a little bit daunting, considering all of the risks involved.
Well, innovation often goes hand in hand with uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
You have to be willing to push boundaries and embrace the unknown. And that's what SoundHound is doing. And that's what makes their story so compelling to follow.
It's that classic startup narrative. Big dreams, cutting-edge tech, passionate people, and a whole lot of risk. It's really exciting. But it also makes you wonder, can they actually pull this off?
One big question mark that hangs over all of this is their financial situation. They've been burning through cash, and that can't continue indefinitely.
Yeah, their report showed a net loss of over $100 million for the first 9 months of this year. That's a pretty hefty sum, even for a company that's growing as fast as they are.
It is. So the question becomes, what's their path to profitability? They can't rely on endless rounds of funding forever.
So lay out the path for me. What needs to happen for them to make this work financially?
Well, I think it comes down to three key things. First, they need to demonstrate that they can scale their business efficiently, so keep growing revenue, but get those operating expenses under control.
So find that sweet spot where revenue is outpacing costs and they start generating positive cash flow.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second factor?
Those acquisitions. They need to prove that SYNQ3 and Amelia were smart investments, not just expensive shopping sprees. Those acquisitions need to start contributing to revenue growth, margin improvement, and ultimately profitability.
So it's not enough to just buy cool tech or expand their customer base. They have to show that those moves are actually making the entire business stronger. What's the third piece of the puzzle?
Their monetization strategy, that third pillar of their revenue model, that voice-driven commerce platform, it's still unproven.
It's like the wild card in their financial future.
Absolutely. High risk, high reward. No guarantees in the world of innovation, especially when you're trying to create an entirely new market. But that's what makes SoundHound such a fascinating case study.
Yeah, they're walking this tightrope between ambitious growth and this very real need for financial stability. Lots of things could go wrong. But if they pull this off, it could be a game changer, not just for them, but for the whole industry.
And that brings us to the end of part 2. We've dug into the competitive landscape, the challenges that they face, and that crucial question of their path to profitability.
But we're not done yet. In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What are the long-term implications of SoundHound's independent approach to voice AI? What could a future where they succeed actually look like?
We'll explore those questions and more in part 3, where we'll speculate on what the future might hold for this very ambitious company.
So stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of our SoundHound saga. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into SoundHound AI. We've covered their financials, we've talked about their strategies, the challenges that they face, and I want to kind of shift gears and look ahead a little bit. What are the long-term implications of all of this? What happens if SoundHound actually succeeds? What if they become the independent voice AI provider?
Well, that is the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they can pull this off, it could really fundamentally change the landscape. Because right now, as we've been discussing, it's very much dominated by a few massive players. You know, Amazon, Google, Apple. They control the platforms. They control the data. They control the whole user experience.
And a lot of companies are starting to get a little bit nervous about that.
Totally.
They don't want to be completely at the mercy of these tech giants, especially if they compete with them in other areas.
Right. It's that classic saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And SoundHound is offering this alternative, a way to tap into the power of voice AI without having to cede control to those big corporations.
So you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have the benefits of voice AI, but you don't have to give up your brand identity. You don't have to give up control of your data.
Exactly. It's a very compelling proposition,
Okay.
especially as consumers become more aware of data privacy and the power that these tech giants wield. People are starting to ask who's really in control here. And SoundHound offers a very different answer.
So it's not just about appealing to businesses. SoundHound is also kind of betting on this shift in consumer attitudes, this growing desire for more personalized experiences, maybe experiences that are a little less big tech controlled.
Right. They're not just reacting to the market. They're actually trying to shape it, create this demand for a different kind of voice AI experience.
But let's be realistic for a second here. Can they actually dethrone the giants? This is a David and Goliath situation, and Goliath has a lot of resources.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle. But remember, David had his slingshot. SoundHound has some pretty powerful weapons of their own.
Like what? Give me some reasons to be optimistic.
Okay, well, first off, their technology is top-notch. You know, their voice AI is known for its speed and accuracy, its ability to handle these really complex queries. And they're constantly innovating, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So that gives them a real edge.
Okay, so they've got the brains. What about the brawn? Can they scale up fast enough to compete with these behemoths?
Well, that's where those strategic acquisitions come in. SYNQ3 and Amelia bring not just technology, but they bring established customer bases, experienced teams, a deeper understanding of specific markets. So it's a way to really accelerate their growth.
So they're not just they're buying their way into a stronger position.
Right.
But even with better tech, even with faster growth, they still need to convince companies to choose them over these really familiar names. You know, Alexa, Google Assistant. How are they doing that?
Well, it goes back to that focus on independence and customization. I think companies are starting to realize that relying on these big platforms comes with strings attached.
Yeah, you gain access to this huge audience, but you risk becoming just another cog in their machine. You lose control of your brand, your data, your customer relationships.
Exactly. SoundHound is offering a way to avoid that trap. It's a chance to build something truly unique, a voice experience that reflects your brand identity and strengthens your bond with your customers.
I'm starting to see the appeal. But let's say, just for fun, SoundHound pulls this off. What would that world look like? What would a world where SoundHound dominates independent voice AI actually look like?
Well, imagine a world where voice AI is everywhere. But instead of a few giant platforms controlling everything, you have this diverse ecosystem of providers, each with their own specialties and strengths. It's like the difference between a monoculture and a thriving rainforest.
So instead of just asking Alexa to play music or set a timer, I could be having a real conversation with my car's AI about my travel plans. I could be getting personalized financial advice from my bank's AI, or even having a virtual doctor's appointment through my healthcare provider's AI.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond this one-size-fits-all approach and creating a world where our interactions with technology are as unique as we are.
It sounds pretty amazing. But I could also see some potential downsides here. Could all this fragmentation lead to compatibility issues, data silos, maybe even a decrease in the overall quality of voice AI? Because everybody's trying to build their own thing.
Yeah, those are valid concerns. And they're definitely challenges that SoundHound's going to have to address if they want this vision to succeed. It's a tightrope walk, balancing the need for innovation with the desire for a smooth, high-quality user experience.
So a lot could still go wrong, but there's also this huge amount of potential upside here.
Oh, absolutely.
It's exciting to think about what they might achieve.
SoundHound's journey is a reminder that the future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by the choices we make, the risks we take, the vision that we dare to pursue. And they're really pushing the boundaries, showing us all what's possible.
It's a classic underdog story, and we all love a good underdog, right? But it's also a story about the power of innovation, the courage to challenge the status quo, and the belief that we can create a better future through technology.
I think that's a great point. SoundHound's story is still being written. It'll be very fascinating to see where it goes from here.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into SoundHound AI. We've covered a lot of ground, explored their business, their technology, their challenges, and their vision for the future.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep your ears open for the voices that are shaping the future of voice AI and beyond. Until next time,